we feel like we've raised the standard, raised the bar, and kind of brought it back to the Michigan lines of old and the great offensive lines that have been here. And that was my number one goal when I took over the position. I told the guys that the standard that we're holding ourselves to is not accountable to the greats that have played here. And that's really what we're trying to do and what we've been doing the past 2 years, and that's not going to change.
All right, there, Michigan offensive coordinator Sherrone Moore on the In the Trenches pod with John Jansen. Oh, yeah. Talking Michigan football here on the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. And that's just a taste of what you're going to hear from Coach Moore. We also have Hunter Dickinson's courageous decision to get to, and we will over the next half hour or so. We're going to start with Sherrone Moore and the audio. Mentioned that he was on the In the Trenches pod yesterday, and we'll be playing select sound from that podcast, and then we will be discussing it with all of you. A chance, if you're watching or listening to this live, to go ahead and make a point, ask a question, respond to something that's going on with the Maize and Blue, and we'll talk about it here on Good Afternoon Michigan Football. And before we get to some of that more audio, people are always thinking about recruiting. And if you want to know who's next for the Maize and Blue, whether it's football, and yeah, basketball as well, well, do what I tell you to do every day. And that is join up with the Maize and Blue Review by going to michigan.rivals.com. You'll know who the next 5 are likely to commit. Obviously, the next one, basketball, football, portal news, features, all day, all night conversation going on about Michigan football over on the Den. It's a lot of fun. You should be there if you're a Michigan fan. Jason mentioning Mother's Day already, getting early there. A great gift for the Maize and Blue mom in your life. We'd like to see your mom over there on the Maize and Blue Review. And moms, we'll see you there on MBR. All right, so Sherrone Moore, he's the offensive coordinator for Michigan. I say that last year he was the co-offensive coordinator. Remember, you had Matt Weiss and it was all about, remember Joel Klatt was like, look, you can't have 2 offensive coordinators because when it comes down to it, somebody has to make the call about who's setting the play up. And then, he got a chance when you're broadcasting a game, and he gets to talk to each coordinator or the coordinators game week, and he was like, I was trying to get that. He didn't get the answers that he wanted. And when you really walk through it and you think about, could there really be a shared responsibility during the game? You come back and you say probably not. That would be a weird thing because you're making one call. How do you split that up? What happens when there's a good call? What happens when there's a bad call? Is it every other play, every other series? If you need a run play, you need a pass play, all of those kind of things that go into it. But guess what? You don't have to worry about that anymore because Sherrone Moore is the guy, and he will collaborate with other members of the offensive staff, and he'll also collaborate with the head coach who knows a thing or two about offense and what they want to do, and then he'll send the play in. Maybe he'll be up in the broadcast booth, or not the broadcast booth. That would be funny. Maybe he'll be up in the press box and making the call so you can see the whole field. Some OCs like to be down there on the field where they get a better feel for what's going on and what they're calling. Also, Moore is the offensive line coach, and, being down there with that particular unit, we'll see. That has not been decided, but the In the Trenches pod, John Jansen, the former Wolverine, hosts the pod, and I thought this was his best work when it comes down to one of his podcasts. I liked all of the questions And Moore did a nice job answering it. They felt very comfortable, the uh, offensive linemen, sticking together, the former O linemen in Moore and Jansen, and I thought they did a good job. And so let's listen to a little bit of this podcast, and then we can react to what Coach Moore, the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach for Michigan, is saying. Moore was asked if the offense needs to be more explosive in the passing game, and ring a bell. Here it is. If you're somebody that watches or listens to this podcast, I would think that there'd be a few of you say, "Oh no, here they are talking about a lack of explosiveness in the passing game, or the wide receivers, or Michigan running the ball too much." And Jansen asked Moore the question if the offense needs to be more explosive in the passing game. And here's Sherrone Moore.
I think we have areas that we need to fix, things that we need to be able to exploit defenses more, and we got to be more consistent. Whether that's ball placement, catches, all those things, and that just gives you more confidence when you're game planning things. And I think in the spring we fixed a lot of those areas, which is really going to help us when we get to the fall.
Okay, more consistent. They worked on it, and Moore didn't say, "No, we're fine, and we're as explosive as we want to be." Ball placement. So that you're talking about the quarterback, and McCarthy had mentioned that throughout the year last year that he needs to put the ball on the receivers, and had some success late in the season. But it's something that not only you're thinking about, but other Michigan fans are thinking about, and enough where Jansen felt that he needed to put that question to Sherrone Moore. And there's his answer about being explosive in the passing game. I thought that was a good one. Now you get to Michigan's backfield and Lightning and Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum. It's a pretty easy thing to talk about when you've got great players, elite players on your team. And Sherrone Moore was asked about that dynamic Michigan backfield.
Sky's the limit, people say. It's through that. These guys are special. And everywhere I was just watching some film of just this past year, and just to watch the little things that those guys do that people don't notice, the little cuts, little moves, the making somebody miss on the first, second, or third level, the running over the guy, jumping over somebody, outrunning them, and then the ball skills that they both have they're elite. So they're as an elite as a group, two tandem group that I've been around, and even better human beings and workers and guys and leaders and everything you want. Like, they're just outstanding individuals, outstanding humans, and just excited that we get to coach them.
Yeah, they are special. I don't think anybody that's watching this or listening to it would say, "Yeah, well, I think he's, that's a coach just, talking up his guys." We're talking about Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, two of the best to ever don the maize and blue, and they're back. And they're in a backfield maybe together. And I don't know how you would answer this question, but I'll put it out there and then I'll answer it. What's the most exciting thing about Michigan football coming up this year? You might say everything. You might say Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. Maybe you say JJ McCarthy. Maybe you say the whole thing. How would I answer what's the most exciting thing about Michigan football? It really is everything. But, that feels a little bit like a cop out. Hey, what's the most exciting thing about Michigan football? Michigan football, because they've got it going everywhere you want it to go. Everywhere you want, everything that you need. And that's why when, I mentioned that, as people are saying, it's not everything. You'd like to have a little bit more of an explosive offense. You would like to have some, more game breakers at wide receiver, because they have game breakers and elite players, it looks like, everywhere else. So people do gravitate towards that. We understand that. But I think one of the answers to what has you most excited about Michigan football, I think that there would be a lot of people that would go to the running backs. They are very exciting. They are game breakers. They are elite. I mean, they are fabulous. Now, Blake Corum, if Blake Corum is back to 100%, we'll see. We know that he is a tireless worker, that he will have everything at his disposal to be able to get back to 100%. I know Harbaugh had mentioned that he would be good to go with everything by, what did he say, around June 1st? So we're pretty close to, hearing that Corum is full go in 3 weeks' time. Wherever Harbaugh is, maybe he'll be out at one of those coaching clinics or something. And maybe one of those reporters will say, "Hey, coach, how's Blake Corum doing?" And he'll say, "He's 100%. He's clear. He's good to go." And so that's what we're expecting, around June the 1st. So those guys are tremendous. Let's see so far what the people are saying. Antoine says that wasn't a good answer. That was more of coach speak. Of course, you got to be accurate and have good ball placement. That was a nothing answer. Well, when you are talking to a coach, Antoine, a lot of the times you are going to get coach speak. And if you are looking for the answer of, well, Antoine thinks we should throw the ball a lot more and thinks we need to recruit better wide receivers. And so if we had premium wide receivers, or Antoine doesn't think, everybody else does, but not Antoine doesn't think our wide receivers coach, who is pretty accomplished and has done a really good job by all accounts except Antoine's. He would say, well, I don't know, there's one guy out there that thinks we should have more complicated route trees. There's one guy out there that thinks that we need to pull in better recruits, but what's he going to say right now? We have what we have. I'm not really sure how you would want to answer that. The thing is that he didn't say, "Don't worry about it. We know what we're good at." I would say it might not have been the answer that you were looking for, but I thought that was an all right answer. Maybe not the greatest answer. I'll buy that. I'll meet you halfway, or some of the way, Antoine. But if you listen to enough coaches and you're out there saying something negative about a football team that just won the Big Ten championship and went to the college football playoff and is locked and loaded everywhere out there, a lot of coaches might be like, what's everybody's problem? Without saying what's everybody's problem, and what he said is that they are working on it and that they have done some things in spring. I would be encouraged if I was you by hearing that answer. And what he is telling you is that last year, what was the issue when throwing the deep ball? Well, it was the location and accuracy of the passes right there. So I think what you're saying right here, I disagree with. I thought that what you're saying, it wasn't a good answer. I'm saying you didn't like the answer. He is a coach, so you are going to get from a coach speak, but it wasn't like what you're talking about. Coach speak to the million other coaches that are out there that could answer that. Do you need to be more explosive? No, we know what we want to do. You don't understand what's going on when we're, out there in the huddle. Some people are never satisfied, those sort of things. I mean, coaches in some ways will say that, not to be combative, but I think that you saying that this is a nothing answer is you, Antoine, needing to step it up a little bit when it comes to what Michigan is doing. You might not like everything they're doing out there, but you saying that was a nothing answer, just coach speak, and talking about ball placement is that you're never going to be satisfied with anything. Antoine goes to the Louvre in over in Paris, and he goes up and he's like, it's Michelangelo. This Mona Lisa. This guy could have been doing a little bit more, with some of the colors over to the side or something. No. Antoine then comes back and says the most exciting thing about Michigan football is they're being aggressive from the front office to the coaching staff. Go blue. Well, there you go. There it is. I was so sick of the front office being slow and cheap. Okay. Let's see. Jason is with you. He thought that was a political coach answer. Let's see. Maybe Mark will make it 3. Did Michigan throw to the backs in the spring? Didn't really notice, but didn't watch for it explicitly. Think it NFL elite play, Michigan to Corum opportunity, Edwards a downfield threat. I know. Well, we didn't have either of those guys, as you know, playing in the spring game. Let me think about it. If they were throwing at all to the backs. And so, I, you know, I would have to go back and look. Although, Mark, to answer your question, I do believe that I have a copy of the box score of the Michigan spring game, which will give us a pretty good. Nothing came to the top of my head immediately remembering that, but I do remember keeping a box score, and here it is. Let's see, receiving. Benjamin Hall was targeted 1 time for the blue team. Danny Hughes, who was wearing number 24, and some people, like the broadcast crew, thought it was Cole Cabana. Hughes was targeted twice and caught 1. So there's 3 targets. So they threw to the running backs 3 times on the blue team. Let's look over at the maize team. Leon Franklin, he's a running back. Leon Franklin was targeted twice, and he caught 2 passes. Let's see somebody else. Jake Thaw. I don't know what Jake Thaw is. And Joe Taylor. And I'm not sure what Joe Taylor is either. But those guys, but the guys that I know, yes, the answer is they did throw a little bit to the backs. And remember, I told you last week, if you talk to players that have played the position, whether it's pro or college, they will tell you that it's a difficult throw for some to make. You got to take a little bit off. A lot of it, other ones you're firing it downfield, and now you're talking about just putting a little pass out there, a little flare pass, a little screen pass. It can be difficult. That could be an issue. Could be something that McCarthy is working on, and something where he could take the next step. So I think we'll see. You would think with the ability of Edwards and Corum to catch the ball, that would have been something that Michigan would have gone to more last year. And so there's only a couple reasons. Like, they're not just doing it like to hell with it. We don't like, they want to do things that they think that are going to work and that fit the players' profile and what they do the best. So we know that the running backs can catch. What we didn't know is about McCarthy, and that's what I think it is as a guess. I know people like, we've got to hear it from the coaches. Well, you don't trust the coaches and what they say because they'll be political about it. So I'm giving you the answer of what I think it is. I think that McCarthy, not that he struggled with it, but it's not his best. He's really good at firing the ball down the field. And in the 20-yard range, fabulous. You saw in the spring game, he extended the pass down the field. It took him a while for ball placement and just being able to put the ball on the receivers, being on the same page there. We did see that, but he was able to get it. Maybe this is something that he will be able to do. Okay, let's see. Okay. All right. There it is. Let's get to some more Sherrone Moore. Sherrone did talk about the explosiveness in the passing game. He did talk about the running backs in Corum and Edwards. And the next question on the In the Trenches podcast, I don't know about the next question. The next one that I have that I want you to listen to, I thought I pulled out a couple of the best ones. Moore talked about getting Corum and Edwards the ball more.
Sky's the limit, people say.
Okay, we had that one. Here's him getting the ball more.
I think we have some really creative things that we're doing with those guys because they are special talents. But at the same time, being very smart with how we do it and when we do it and how we're attacking people. So just excited to put them in their different positions because we'll have a great plan and we're starting that right now.
So getting more creative, like how creative can you get with your running backs? Well, you could put them both out there at the same time. Would that be getting creative? Uh, that would be more creative than just having one of them. And, so you put both of them out there, and then maybe you split Donovan Edwards out. We talked about that a lot last year. Is the ability of him catching the ball. I would think you say, hey, what does he mean about getting more creative? Throwing the ball more to Donovan Edwards. And it really satisfies what a lot of people want to see because people want to see a more explosive passing game. You want to get the ball to the players that in space that can make big plays and give you chunk plays and yards after the catch. And the Don can do all of those things. And so getting Donovan Edwards the ball out of the backfield or lining him up as the slot while Corum is out there trying to get a mismatch, whatever you can do to get Edwards on a linebacker. Remember the one that stands out to me the most was against Michigan State. And I don't know how many times they did this. They had Donovan Edwards run straight down the middle of the field, and he was on a linebacker, and he, shook him once to the left and then cut to the right. And for a big gainer, I think for like 20 yards, that seemed like taking candy from a baby. I think when they go back and they're self-scouting and they're watching the film, they'll say, getting Donovan Edwards down the field, and even if he's a safety or hell, a corner on him, getting him the ball down the field in the passing game is something creative, explosive in the passing game, opens it up more. I think it does everything. So I think people will like that, and I think they'll like to see that, and we'll see if they can do that, if they're going to. There's only so many things you can do, but that one I think is pretty obvious and is something that I would expect them to do. Gary says, I hear JJ and Blake have gained muscle. JJ 15 pounds and Blake 20 pounds. They're going to rock. Yeah, well, JJ had mentioned that he had put on some weight, and Blake had mentioned that he had wanted to put on some muscle there. And so, yeah, I think that's what you do in the off season. You're working on everything, and then you pick the weight, trying to figure out, your perfect weight. These guys, I do think that. Antoine is back and says, do you remember when Michigan unleashed Donovan Edwards out of the backfield 2 years ago against Maryland? Now, why haven't they used Donovan out of the backfield since then? Well, since the Maryland game 2 years ago when he had those 10 catches for 170 yards, I think that they have used Donovan Edwards out of the backfield. If you remember the Michigan State game. Now, you might want to see it against, I know you love playing the real easy games, but part of when you're playing real easy teams, Antoine, you call them the cupcakes and you love it because Michigan's going to win by 50. When you're playing Colorado State and Hawaii and UConn, are you really looking to throw the ball down the field or go to your the flip the page in the playbook? Coaches don't like doing it. Ask Jason. For some reason they think if you run Donovan Edwards down the field, oh no, or even if you throw him a pass out of the backfield, everybody's going to be like, oh no, that's on film now, and everybody's going to be watching the film and they're going to be ready for it. So these coaches wait. So Edwards, I believe, was hurt. So that was at the tail end of last year. You might have wanted to see him do it against Ohio State or they did put something pretty creative for him when he threw the pass in the Iowa game or against Georgia. Maybe they had something in there. And sometimes you do put things in and you're just not able to get to it. The block's not there. You have the play called, and it just doesn't work out. So I would have to go back and look late in the season, but I don't think I'm trying to remember, but I don't think that that Donovan Edwards was ready for the Maryland game for the start of the Big Ten season, because remember, Blake Corum had 30 carries for how many yards did he have? 245 or something like that. 245 and 30 carries against Maryland. So Edwards might have been hurt. And then, he was back for Iowa, and, he did catch a touchdown. You go back and look in the first half, he caught a sweet touchdown from JJ McCarthy. And so, I don't know. I mentioned the MSU game. I think, you're looking for them. Maryland 2 years ago, it was a lot easier game, and he was a freshman. And so I think that, but I do think they are going to throw him the ball a little bit more. Here's JP talking about these guys putting on weight. JJ putting on 10 to 15. He thinks that's okay in his book. If Blake put on that 20, it concerns Jason, to be honest. He hasn't been training at full potential, and now 20 is a lot for his stature. Yeah, well, I don't know what the exact weight is. I do know that when you look at the NFL backs and you think about the pounding that they take, where they want to be, Corum, and for like what you're talking about, Jason, he will want to have his speed and explosion, and marrying that up exactly where you want your weight to be and the playing weight. They will be able to figure that out. I don't worry so much about that. They've got the best people that will be on that. Like if Corum comes out and he's looking a little bit too much like a fullback, they might be like, but hey, sometimes guys can put that weight on, and they can carry it, and they can keep everything that made them great backs to begin with. So we'll see on that. These are off-season things that you might hear, you might read. Some guys are talking to sources that are down in the weight room. I mean, what are we really getting there? Are you talking to now? If Ben Herbert, the strength and conditioning coach, or somebody that works with Herbert, went on like a podcast with John Jansen or was available for the media or something, and I would think that would be one of the first questions. Like, hey, where do you like Corum's weight at? It's something that you experiment with, and then with the latest science and everything, you work at. So the level of concern that I have with Corum, if Corum was somebody that didn't, you think you didn't know about his work ethic or something else, you might say, he's had his knee, maybe he's sitting around. I would say making a motion like drinking. That would be a story. No, maybe eating too much or something, but I wouldn't worry too much about that if I was a fan. That's what's happening. Richard says that Dono's broken hand handicapped his catching last year, pun intended. Good point. That's clearly something that maybe a coach would be watching this and say, yeah, Antoine, it's going to be a little bit difficult when a guy busts up his thumb to be throwing him bombs down the field. That might have affected what they had in store for the passing game. Mark says that he thinks that Corum has good hands and caught a few short routes early last year. How has JJ's footwork improved, as he missed a few last year and the interception was footwork related? Well, I think that is an excellent question. And for that, let's go back to the pod and the In the Trenches. And here's Sherrone Moore talking about JJ McCarthy.
I think we have some really creative things that we're
That's not Sherrone Moore. That was him talking about the running backs. Here's Sherrone Moore talking about JJ McCarthy.
First thing is confidence, just his confidence. He was always a quiet, confident kid, but now you can see it exuded in the way he just walks around, the way he approaches the film room, the way he walks on the field. When he gets out of the huddle or he looks to the sideline for a play, like the dude just looks like he's dynamic. just in the way he approaches everything. He always had the arm talent and the strength and all that. What he's done now with his body, started to form his body even more. But mentally into the game, he knows the playbook like we do. And I think when a quarterback does that, and he's always around, like besides if he's not in class, he's here. So when a quarterback starts doing that, especially your starter, that really changes the game. And then from a leadership standpoint, he's starting to take that ownership. And we've got so many good leaders on the team. You don't want too many guys to be talking, but I always told him as the quarterback, you have the trump card to get it how you want it to be done.
There's Sherrone Moore talking about J.J. McCarthy, and specifically to Mark's question about his feet and improving from this year from last year. That is the exact question that John Jansen asked him, where he can make those improvements. So, Mark, here's your question answered.
Yeah, I mean, I think just trusting himself, trusting his progression, trust all that, and just go through them just like he did in the spring. You really saw that in the spring carry over from the fall. Instead of sometimes you felt like he's out there just making plays, and now he's going through the progressions, going through the reads, knows exactly where the ball's going to go. He's on time with his feet, and everything just looks so comfortable for him. He just looks kind of like he's in a video game sometimes. So just excited to watch him do that and to continue to do that as he goes through fall.
I would say that was nothing like coach speak. He gave you, people have talked about McCarthy going through his progressions. People have talked about his feet, mentioned it. And when he said at times it looked like JJ was just out there running around making plays, that is what it looked like to me. That really resonated with me. That went all the way back to the first game against Western when he threw that 69-yarder Baldwin. He was spinning around, pirouette, ran, threw the ball across the field. That was like one of the biggest wow plays that you would ever see. But you're like, wait a second. I mean, is this guy going to be able to just sort of run around like a chicken with his head cut off and then just throw the ball down the field? This is crazy. And then we saw a little bit more of that 2 years ago. And then last year against Maryland, I mean, he was great in the non-conference. And then against Maryland in the first half, he was running around and he was doing these figure eights. And then he fumbled the ball twice. And I was like, oh no, JJ's trying to do too much. JJ doesn't have the feel. You can't, outrun guys in the Big Ten, even from Maryland like that. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And then, by the second half, he had already become more comfortable there. But yeah, a lot of that as a first-time starter. I know you want people as a first-time starter to be, perfect quarterbacks and be able to do all of it with the progressions and throwing the ball down the field and pre-snap stuff, all the stuff that you have to do, leadership, ball placement after being injured and not having the spring. You wanted him to be able to be, the perfect quarterback. And he was really good, but it took him a while. And, he exploded in the Ohio State game. And there are some of the things that you're talking about and what he is able to do now and what they have seen for him. I would be encouraged if I was a Michigan fan listening to what Sherrone Moore had to say there specifically, especially because it wasn't coach speak. It was right there what you're looking for if you're a Michigan fan. So that's it. That's what I heard from Sherrone Moore. Let's take some of the feedback on what the coach had to say, see where everybody is at. Richard says our tight end room is going to be a blocking powerhouse too. Richard, I did not take, I could have, taken, everything Sherrone Moore had to say. And you're, all Michigan fans, Michigan man, you probably have already heard the podcast there. And when Moore talked about the tight ends and, he couldn't have said any more glowing things about Loveland. Now it was, his ability, and boy, it was nothing, not, it sounds like I am harping on it because I've said it a few times now. There was no coach speak when he was talking about the tight ends and what Loveland can do. And then Barner, Jim Scarcelli, who joins us on Wednesdays, was pointing out when we were watching so much of the film after the spring game, he kept, pointing out that, hey, this 89 is big and he can block and he can move. And Moore was talking about the ability of AJ Barner, a former captain at Indiana, and what he could do. Likes the athleticism of Hibner, and we saw him flash in the spring game. And then I thought he came over the top a little bit, non-coach speak, but gave you good information when he was talking about one of the young tight ends in number 17, Marlon Klein. When I might not have it exactly how he said, but I think he said that he's the best athlete out of all of those guys. Could be, maybe he said something along those lines, that he is just an athletic freak. So I think that's how he did say it. So yeah, when you start going through those tight ends and what Michigan, I feel pretty good about that. Now, you're in a spot now when you're watching Michigan. Like last year, I can remember sitting around and talking about, man, the quarterback position is loaded. With McNamara and McCarthy. The running backs look great. The offensive line from left to right, outstanding. The question was, Oluwatimi going to be able to come in? Well, probably. He had so much success at Virginia. The tight ends with both All and then, Schoonmaker as well, who had come on the year before in that Indiana game where he caught a couple touchdowns. You felt really good about of the tight ends, and that's where if you fast forward a year, you're feeling good. I feel good about all the positions, specifically on offense, is what we're talking about right now. I don't know what they're going to do at left tackle. Could they put Barnhart over to the left side? I mean, he started a lot, and have Jones. Sure. Could they have guys like that they brought in a transfer portal, and Henderson and Hinton? Could one of those guys play tackle? Yeah, they could. Could it be somebody down when you're getting to, second and third strings, and Percy or Bounds? Yeah, they got a lot. I don't know if they got a pretty good idea, but I think they got some guys coming in that, that's clearly one of the position battles, left tackle, I would say, that is, going to be one of those positions to watch on offense. So that's where I'm at there. And, your tight end, I know what you're talking about. Here's Mark. No one saves a stock good play. They are like making putts. Teams only save a non-tendency, maybe trick play, but no good plays are hidden. They are repped and repped. Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's see. Antoine, people show something like you can't use it again. Even if you know it's coming, you still have to defend it. Mr. Linebacker that's not used to covering it, especially a linebacker. I've seen Donovan outplay the corners. I'm with you on that. Richard is saying it's hard for him to complain about Michigan being the best football team in 25 years. Yeah, it might sound like complaining, but I'm with Antoine on this. We're talking about we're talking about Michigan. Now, look, I'm here every day. Now, if you get people that when they talk about Michigan, they have a hard time talking about them every day in the off season, because you do go over a lot of the same material and a lot of stuff. So you are going to go to, hey, how can they maximize their potential? I mean, even people that are, covering Michigan, I don't know who's talking about Michigan every day. And are they talking about the personnel? Are they talking about the schedule? Are they really honing in on what you want to talk about? I think, talking about maximizing the potential, looking out there, and then, anything that comes up, that's what we're trying to do there. Having a lot of fun doing it, along the way. Richard is a maximum fan of AJ. I am too. I sure am. This looks like some new feedback coming in from Glenn. It's good to see them. If you're not familiar with the leader of the Ernest Hausman bandwagon, it is Scott who joins us on this Thursday. And Scott says we should have two of the best tight ends in the country this upcoming season. Yeah, look, the thing about Barner, he's getting a lot of, he can really block. He's really big. You look at his numbers from last year from Indiana, there's nothing like you look at it and be like, hmm. So he was a captain. Maybe he's going to be great. I'm not, I don't know. Two of the best tight ends. No, I'm with you on Loveland. I think Loveland is great. I'm not sure. I know he flashed a little bit as well in the spring game talking about Barner. I'm just not quite. I think as a group, they're good. And are they one of the best in the country? I don't know. When you start saying things like that, I don't really know what everybody's got going on. The rest of the teams in the country. I know they're pretty good. They all kind of seem similar. They all seem like they're about 6'5", 250, and can block and catch passes. All good, I'd say cookie cutter in a good way. I mean, these guys are out there all about the same size, all look like they can do about the same things. That's pretty good. But I'm not sure about them. I'm not sure about Michigan having the best two. I think the depth. I'm not sure who are the best two. I think the best blocker is Burner. I think the best pass catcher is Loveland. Who's the best combination of all of those things? I think it's Loveland. Who would be the number two guy there? I don't know. Hibner seems like he's more of a pass catcher and a run after catch guy than Barner. But who's the security blanket? Who's Schoonmaker on there? I don't. I've got a little bit of a feel, but I'm not sure that Michigan. When you say they have two of the best tight ends in the country, I'm not sure the two that you would pick. Seems we are back to the barriers to a natty show. That's the season theme for sure. Yeah, well, just like if you go back and watch Monday's show, I put out the three, what do you want to call them? What did you say? The three hot topics, three trending things that are the storylines. That's what I called it on Monday. And one of those is, Michigan winning the national championship. That's legitimate to talk about. We can all agree on that, after, getting to the college football playoff the last 2 years. And so, yeah, we are, even though we're just in May, we're already talking about, in some ways it's crazy, beating Ohio State, going undefeated, winning the Big Ten, and getting right back to where they were last year. Starting out now where they were last year against TCU, and whoever they're going to play, are they going to be able to make plays in the passing game? Are they going to be more dynamic, with their offense? I mean, so these are the things that, that we've been talking about. And so that is one of the major storylines, Mark. Major storyline for Michigan, win a national championship. So, yeah, that is going to be talked about. Scott doubling down, calling Barner an NFL player. Gary likes the coaching staff. He says Jim has surrounded himself with the best coaches, men and women. Good job there, Gary. Including, I was going to say Miss Morris. I don't know, Mrs. Morris, Miss Morris. I forget exactly, everybody on the coaching staff, after the first wave and then second wave of coaches and analysts and everything else. Scott declaring that Henderson is out at left tackle. Yeah, well, that's going to be news to me, Scott. But I'm not really sure where you're getting your information from. He's coming back and now saying he thinks Henderson is still finishing up classes. I don't believe he's on campus yet. Well, why would that preclude him from being out at left tackle? That wouldn't. So, not really sure why you said that. Gary, with the nicest thing anybody said to me all day long. Dennis, your podcast is interesting every show. Well, thanks, Gary. A lot of it I'm going to credit the people. I'm going to credit Richard and Antoine and Mark and JP. coming in, and you, Gary, for contributing and being able to like to know. And I can tell you what's on my mind. Hearing what's on the people's mind, the Michigan fans' mind, is something that you want. It gives you a good gauge, good balance on where you're at and what people are thinking and what you're saying. OT Hibner looks like a fall down after the catch guy. Well, in the spring game, that's exactly what happened. He was a fall down after catch guy. So that's going to stay with Mr. Hibner for a while. And just see. Now, Hibner's a throw him the ball for 50 plus yards fall down guy. That's a nicer way to say it. It's like, sure, he did fall down, down there at the 10-yard line or something. But previous to that, he caught the ball and ripped off 50 yards, 52 yards to be exact. So, I know you're being a little funny there. And that's what we know him so far for, but that's all right. It's all right. Let's see. Okay. We do have one other thing that we're going to get to, and that is something on the basketball side that just came out over the last day or two, and it's Hunter Dickinson. Now, Hunter Dickinson is pretty interesting. He was on his podcast, and so he was talking about Michigan and Kansas and everything else, NIL. And he indicated that he still loved Michigan. And I thought that he made a good point, and then one that I didn't agree with. And so this is the one that I thought was a good point. Dickinson on the Round Ball Pod. He said, quote, "The people hating on me would leave their job right now for a $10,000 increase. I got less than six figures at Michigan for the year." That's the end of the quote. Now, there's a lot in there. Some people took that he's only getting 10,000 more at Kansas. I didn't. But the thing about Dickinson for me is that just from a Michigan standpoint, it hurts Michigan basketball. So I'll say nothing against Hunter, but if he was sitting right here, it'd be like, Hunter, this is from a Michigan fan standpoint. You understand that you can go anywhere you want. You can leave. It's within the rules. Michigan fans understand that. But it's a tough thing because in basketball now, normally, and it's been like this for a while, if you have a good player for 1 year, he's gone. And it's like, hey, nice to know you. And you barely knew anyone. And it's like, it's the, I don't know if it's the worst thing, but it's one of the worst things about college basketball, not having guys and just not knowing who's going to be on the roster next year. I know some people think that's exciting. Hey, we're going to have a completely new team. Not me. I like to have a little name recognition. I like to know the guys. So Hunter is different automatically because he was excellent as a freshman and the team had a lot of success. And then he came back for his sophomore year and then he came back for his junior year. Wow. So, here's somebody like a known commodity, a good player, and unusual that he could come back to a team. And then the part that that it hurts Michigan is that he's a really good player. So that hurts the next year's team because he's a big man and he's saying that, Michigan isn't hooking people up when it comes basketball players. When it comes down to name, image, and likeness, you got to imagine that there's a few recruits, the ones that might think about the long run, thinking like if Juwan Howard's like, hey, if you stay around here, our NIL will take care of you. And the guy's going to be like, that's not what Hunter said. That really hurts. It was always going to hurt if you're like the kid that I think would have gone to Michigan and they were in a really good chance with him, Isaiah Collier, who ended up going to USC, the number one player in the country. Like Michigan brought him in and was like, look, look at Colston Loveland on the football team. He's driving a $90,000 truck. Look at Hunter Dickinson. I'll make up a number. Hunter said he never got six figures. I'll just say I believe him. Hey, Isaiah, you can make, after you come in here, you could potentially make $95,000 next year. And then Collier goes out and visits USC, and they pick him up in a, drop top Bentley, and they say, "Hey, this car is yours." Then they say, "In the trunk, we got a suitcase full of cash. It's $1 million. You you like music, you like acting, you're just going to have to show up down there at Universal Studios, or you're going to have to go to Dr. Dre's house, whatever it is to be able to earn that money." We're not talking six figures, we're talking seven figures. That's going to be a really easy decision with your Isaiah Collier. You're thinking you're going pro after 1 year anyways. You want a million in your hand right now? Or are you thinking about, hey, if everything goes well, you might be able to get 95,000. I mean, look, what are we talking about here? So it hurts Michigan. And then, really, if you're Hunter Dickinson and you're leaving, and I think everybody can understand this. If, let's just say, he's making $200,000 or $300,000, and I don't know, you got people saying it's millions, it's whatever. Here's a value. It's 300,000. It's more than $10,000. It looks like it's like more than 100, maybe 200, maybe even $1 million more. Could you begrudge somebody for leaving for maybe $1 million? No. Could you begrudge a guy for leaving that is also going to a team that will be the number one team in college basketball next year, a team that just won the national championship 2 years ago, a team that never misses the NCAA tournament, a chance at winning a national championship, and I'll just say 5 times the amount of money? Can I begrudge a guy for doing that? Who would? It's hard to do. But then this was the part where I wasn't really feeling it when it came down to Hunter Dickinson, and I didn't agree with. And this is again from the Round Ball Pod. He said it took a lot of courage. I don't think people realize how much courage it took for a guy who was there for 3 years and an All-American for the team. Now, maybe this is just a generation gap. I'm older and Hunter's a young guy, and he's talking about, hey, I'm going to be really courageous and go to a team that's going to be a preseason number one, and it's going to pay me $500,000 over a team that I was the leader of, couldn't make the NCAA tournament, probably are going to make it next year, and I'm going to have to, settle for $95K. Is it courageous? No, it could be a tough decision because he loves Michigan. I think his girlfriend goes to Michigan if they're still together. What's not to like about Ann Arbor? But would I say it's courageous? No. I could buy him saying it's a tough decision. Boy, I really, so tough for him. But, in the end, it's a better spot for basketball. It's a better spot more money-wise. I think everybody would understand there. But courageous? That's not the word. How about just saying, look, it was the best decision, even though it was tough for me, basketball-wise and financially. I think we get it. But from a Michigan fan standpoint, it hurts. It just shows that the basketball program, it's in a tough spot. It hurts the basketball program right now, next year, and it hurts in recruiting. And it shows, Michigan's cards when it comes to name, image, and likeness. Because as you recall, last year, we went over it. People were worried about it with football, with good reason, as Michigan wasn't playing the upfront money game. And, that's the one funny thing. You got a lot of people throwing out the numbers like, this is what he got. Hunter Dickinson can't say, what he was able to get. That part, he would be, putting Kansas on probation if he came out and said he got $2 million. It would be stupid even if he was telling his friends what he got, because they could go back and say, wait a second. So, him zipping it up is a smart move, but, he's getting a lot more money there. But, it hurts. Michigan was supposed to, while they weren't going to do what everybody else is doing, they were going to reward the people that stayed. I think we'll amend that and say the people that stay that play football. If you play basketball, you're not getting that kind of money. What would have been interesting to me is if Michigan, and you play the for instance game, if Michigan last year would have done what they had done the previous year, had kind of a dicey season, but found a way to get into the tournament and then won 2 games. Let's say they would have gone to the Sweet 16 again. Would that have made some people out there want to pony up some more money to get Hunter Dickinson and like, hey, the basketball program, look at that, they get to the Sweet 16. Look at the shine that Michigan State was getting for getting to the Sweet 16 this year, especially after State was like, crying about, I don't know why Michigan's celebrating the Sweet 16 so much, and then they got there and it's like, we made the Sweet 16. Would there have been, quite a bit more push to keep Dickinson around? Would he have maybe wanted to stay then, if there was somehow, if Michigan would have been able to, make a little run in the NCAA tournament? So that's it. I think, Dickinson made a good point. He made one that I didn't agree with, but, am I getting a little choosy when it comes from picking words? I don't know how courageous. I mean, I'm not really thinking about courageous. Now, the other part that I think about, and it's a little bit unique to basketball, and it's really unique to the star players. Like, you understand that he could just go wherever he wanted to. Like, we all understand that. People make that point all the time. I would go somewhere where I could make more money and I would have a chance to win. We all understand that. I relate it to when Kevin Durant played for Oklahoma City. Do you remember the kind of negativity he got for picking Golden State? And there were a lot of people like, he can pick wherever he wants to go. We understand that. But when it comes to a star, what a star does, like if Durant would have stayed where he was in Oklahoma City, there was going to be a certain amount of respect that he would have been able to get, especially if he would have gone on and led the Thunder to a title. You'd have said, look at this guy. He stayed where he was at, and he was able to build a championship for the team that traded for him. If he would have gone back home to like Washington, who didn't really have any good prospects, and he would have flourished there, people would have been saying the same thing. But what did Durant do? Durant's one of the top 20 players ever in the NBA. And in this generation, and then if we go back to where he was at, you're thinking about he could be the best of a 10, 20-year run of players in the NBA. There's only a few players that are like that. And instead of sticking it out, he decided to go to a team that won more games than anybody in NBA history, and whatever they had, 72 wins or something, whatever it was. And he just hopped on the coattails of the Warriors. Sure, he played great and was the MVP in there, but those rings were a little cheap to me. A little cheap, honestly, about that. And that's how it feels with Dickinson. I know Dickinson's not one of the greatest players of all time, but he's really good and he's a star, and he certainly was the star with the Michigan team. And that's the kind of thing that you talk about. That's just sports-wise. And I'm sure Dickinson, when he's, sitting around counting his money, he's not going to be like, hey, go ahead. I don't like the comparison. But coattailing his way out to Kansas and winning a championship is not as big of a deal as if he stayed with Michigan and was able to somehow, over the next 2 years, pull them, as crazy as it would seem, to be some kind of, a Big Ten championship or a Final Four. Or, that would have been courageous, because people would have been saying, what are you doing? You're giving up hundreds of thousands of dollars probably. And a team that could easily win the national championship for Michigan. And he could say something like, I want to finish what I started. I love Ann Arbor. Hey, I'll get paid down the road with my education more than anything that Kansas. Now, to me, that would have fit the courageous title. Not jumping out and making more. It was an easy. Hey, it's one that I think almost everybody would make. Hey, basketball-wise, financial-wise, a great move. But it's not courageous. That's my thought on Hunter Dickinson. Okay, let's see what the people are saying. AJ says, that was courageous. Just think of how many more millions of dollars you got to count. Yeah, courageous. Roderick says, I believe in Coach Howard. When we're back at the top, Big Ten folks will fall all over themselves this coming season. All right. I hope you're right, Roderick. Michigan makes the NCAA tournament next year without Hunter. I hope you're right, Scott. And then here's Mark. Kansas is a founding member of the AAU. Michigan undergrad, not that much more valuable unless engineering that honors at Kansas. Not graduating, okay, but that much better than a P5 school. P5, Power 5. Kansas is a Power 5. Yeah, I don't know. Like, if you want to tell me, about the undergrad and what's all that, I defer to people like that. I don't know. I mean, that's not something. I listen to people. I see the rankings and all of that, and I take your word for it. When it comes down to that, I don't know if a Michigan degree is in whatever specific endeavor you're going after would be, worth that much more than a Kansas degree in whatever certain vocation. I don't know. So, okay. When it comes down to that, that's it. Hunter got a great education at U of M. Sure. Andre's smart decision to not lead with the hoops talk, Dennis. Hey, it came up. I was debating whether even to go to it because I'd already talked about Hunter. And I said, look, congratulations, move on. It was Hunter Dickinson. But then he came out and said that. And I was like, courageous. At least I'll mention it. And so I mentioned it. And that's what happened. Let's see if I got. Okay. I got the message I was looking for. I just wanted to. I'm going to take it while I'm sitting here. Okay. That's what I thought. So it's not worth mentioning. I thought I might have been on to a little bit of a scoop or something, and I'm not. I think people could talk about, if you're a Michigan fan, this is it. Like, this is fandom. You're either with us or you're against us. And, Hunter's not anymore. So there are going to be some people that are going to be disgruntled. I even tried that, what I thought was having fun with the situation a while back, because if you recall, when it was even before Hunter put on his ski mask, which I thought at the time was ridiculous. I know some Michigan fans and media liked it and all that, but whatever. Everybody could have an opinion on it. I thought it was it wasn't good. But what was my point on what I was going to say about Dickinson? Oh, I put a tweet out because he had been on a podcast, during the basketball season, and you like to it goes back to what Antoine was saying before. It's like Antoine didn't like the coach speak. Jason didn't want to hear coach speak from Sherrone Moore. He wanted to hear it. And Hunter Dickinson was on the podcast with his guys, and he was basically like, F off, Wisconsin fans. You're a bunch of scumbags. Well, that's what he called them. He said their fan base is a bunch of scumbags. Now, he was telling it that wasn't any player speak. That wasn't any coach speak. That was real talk. Scumbags. It's also a part when you're a member of a team and you represent a university about showing a little class. Now, to me, I would like, Michigan players to show some class. That was not classy, calling the Badger fans, even if it's true, a bunch of scumbags. And it was kind of in the same line of thinking that I thought when you put a ski mask on, you're representing Michigan, and Juwan Howard is running the basketball program. This isn't the WWE. You're drawing attention to yourself. How about not doing something that no other player at any level of basketball that I've ever seen in my life decided that they were going to do, which is put on a ski mask and talking about, stealing a victory. And then, you know what? It didn't work. I know a lot of people are like, well, if it would have worked, well, it didn't work. So that argument was out the window immediately to me. Now, my point there, when it came down to all of that, is that when I put the tweet out, I thought, I'd have a little fun with him and said it was a scumbag move towards Michigan, because it did. It hurt Michigan on a lot of different levels. And then people thought that I was actually calling him a scumbag. I guess they didn't know the history of Hunter and what he had to say about Wisconsin fans, and then of course there are a bunch of people that are not Michigan fans who are just like, you're a scumbag, calling me a scumbag. So that's kind of what happens when you put yourself out there on Twitter. All right, I'll take. Hey, we're still here. People still going to make some points. Let's do it. Back to football. Coach Moore will have a top 10 offense this season. Roderick, I'm hoping for. Yeah, okay, let me just top 10. I agree. They will have a top 10 offense. They had a number 6 offense this year. I think Michigan's offense can be better and more explosive than it was last year. I think Michigan will have a top 5 offense. How about that, Roderick? I don't know. I'm not. It feels a little homerish saying that, but it's true. Some of the stuff when you talk about Michigan, you do feel like too much talking, not enough winning. I think that's towards Hunter. Screw class with Wisconsin. Nobody threw any punches. Oh, wait. Yeah, the Michigan fans had a tough time with the slap swing from Juwan Howard. Don't those guys get media education? They do, but it's different now, Richard. Now the guys are getting paid, and back when I was working in Ann Arbor, I mean, you try to get a player, just to even do an interview, they'd be like, "Oh my God, don't talk to him during the season." And if a guy even you'd say, "Hey, what do you think about going up to East Lansing?" And all of a sudden, everybody would look like, "Oh my God, what's he gonna say?" Dickinson's out there telling people to F scumbags, and but that's where we're at now, and a lot of people like that. And there's a certain amount. Do I want to hear? It's too. I keep using Antoine. To use Antoine, it was before. Didn't like the coach speak and player speak. You want to keep it real. I think there's a lot of people that that appreciate. Like, hey, if Hunter Dickinson thinks the other team's a bunch of scumbags, let's hear it. Wants to tell people to go jump in. Let's hear it. He thinks he's going to be on the WWE. Wear a mask. Don't wear any clothes. I don't know, whatever it is. Forget class. There's a line in there somewhere, and it's different. It's crossed over, but then there's another line, and I think Hunter did cross that line. I don't know. That makes me sound that sounds like I want entertaining content, and yet I don't want it to go too far. So I think you could press me on that and saying I'm being a little wishy-washy, and I think you might be right about that. Antoine says, "Don't be scared to stick your chest out. It's not like we don't have the weapons to do it." That's right, Antoine. Michigan top 5. Michigan number 1. Maybe that's a podcast topic to discuss. There you go, Roderick. See, Roderick comes back. Roderick's a big man. He understands that he says something and is like, wait a second, you know what? Yeah, maybe you're right. Top 5. My bad. Social media scarred. That could happen. This is from the coach. I think people want you to be real. You don't have to be outrageous. Just speak the truth. Mark says Bull Durham. Kevin Costner interview prep. Well, you're exactly right about that, Mark. For people that don't know, the Bull Durham movie, it is one of the great sports movies of all time. And, Costner, the veteran minor leaguer, and they had the young hotshot pitcher. He said, "Hey, here's the couple of ways that you answer the questions." And they're very cliche. We're just going out there and, giving our 100%, all those kind of things. That's a very funny line. I wish I should be able to recite it all right off the top of my head, Mark, but you're right on it there. Bull Durham media training. That's it. That was some great stuff. Great movie. I love it. It's been a long time. Turn the sprinklers on. Almost killed a mascot with a pitch. Great stuff. Bull Durham. Kevin Costner, good in baseball movies. Okay, that's going to do it for today's show. The good news is we'll see you next week. No, we won't. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll be right back here tomorrow. And whatever's going on with the latest in Michigan sports, we'll attack it. And to steal a line from Jim Harbaugh with enthusiasm. I don't know about unknown mankind, but we'll have I'll be enthusiastically here tomorrow. Thanks so much for all of your feedback. We'll see you over on the Maize and Blue Review on the Den. Till tomorrow.